Hello, everyone. Welcome to Community Connections. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a wonderful session planned for you, and we are joined by some incredible guests, which I will introduce in a second. So again, my name is Jeremy Capone. I am the Community Connections Program Coordinator. I'm also the Wellness Chef for ELLICSR Kitchen at the Cancer Rehabilitation and Survivorship Program at Princess Margaret Cancer Center. Thank you for joining our live stream today. If you haven't already, I would love if you would subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell. We do one of these live stream Community Connections classes on the third Thursday of every single month, always joined by a new guest and always sharing some new content, some incredible presentations, and then a really fun cooking and nutrition demonstration. So to start off, we are going to introduce our guests and our presenters for the first session. And then at 12 p.m., we will begin our cooking and nutrition demonstration. So joining us today, I'm so happy to introduce My Gut Feeling, the Stomach Cancer Foundation of Canada. And just a little bit about them. So My Gut Feeling was founded in 2016 by two cancer survivors. It is the only nonprofit volunteer-led organization in Canada dedicated to provide peer-to-peer support, awareness, education, information, and advocacy for stomach cancer patients, survivors, and caregivers. And the two co-founders of this organization and the people that will be leading the presentation coming up are Teresa, Tiano, and Katy, Kosyachkova. I'm sorry if I earned your name, Kosyachkova. I think that's better. They are the co-founders of My Gut Feeling, cancer survivors, and just incredible individuals, and we're so excited to be working with them for today's session. So without further ado, Teresa and Katy, thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and a huge thank you to ELLICSR and to Jeremy and Daniela for inviting both Katy and I to speak to you today and introduce My Gut Feeling, Stomach Cancer Foundation of Canada, and speak a little bit about how we support stomach cancer patients. A little bit about myself. My name is Teresa Tiano. I'm the chair and obviously co-founder of My Gut Feeling. I was diagnosed in July of 2011. I had a subtotal gastrectomy that was done laparoscopically, and I also had the McDonald protocol, which was chemo and radiation concurrently, which was not fun. I was a stage 2B diagnosis. I am an 11-year stomach cancer survivor. Through my diagnosis of stomach cancer, I was actually tested for a genetic syndrome, and I am positive for Lynch syndrome. And I have since survived 5 cancers.
And my name is Katy. I'm the vice chair and co-founder of My Gut Feeling, Stomach Cancer Foundation of Canada. I was diagnosed same year as Teresa, 2011, at the ripe old age of 21 years old. At that time, I had a total gastrectomy, which means 100% of my stomach has been removed. The procedure was an open surgery, not laparoscopic like Teresa. But I also had the chemotherapy and radiation as per the McDonald protocol, which at the time in 2011 was the standard of care for patients. Today, I am proud to say that I'm a physician assistant working in medical oncology at Princess Margaret Hospital in Toronto. So I've come full circle from patient to provider. Yay. A little bit about My Gut Feeling and how we started. So again, like I said, we were both diagnosed in 2011. I was diagnosed first, so my diagnosis came in March. And myself being 21 and quite tech savvy, I went on all the cancer forums, sharing my story and trying to find somebody, anybody really, that had stomach cancer and more rarely stomach cancer at a young age. Unfortunately, in 2011, there just was no such platform as a Stomach Cancer Foundation. So I was unable to find any peers going through this diagnosis. So ultimately, I had to make the decision to have my entire stomach removed and have chemoradiation without being able to really talk to anybody about any of the long-term implications. When I completed treatment, Teresa actually reached out on one of the forums that I had initially reached out on. And I was lucky enough to be able to mentor Teresa and really tell her what it's like to live without a stomach and what it's like to go through this type of cancer journey. So we initially started out as our own support groups, but then in 2016, we decided to make it official. And we started the first nonprofit organization specifically for stomach cancer patients, survivors, and caregivers so that nobody has to go through this diagnosis alone.
So our organization has 4 pillars, and those 4 pillars are support, education, awareness, and advocacy. And it's by survivors, for patients, survivors, and caregivers. This is our mission and our goals. I won't go into all of it, but you can read it, and we live this mission and these goals every day. This is our board of directors. Of course, there's Katy and I, and everybody on the board is cause related. So Katy, myself, and Lena are survivors. Lena is in fact a 22-year stage 3C, I believe, survivor. Ramin, Emma, and Ramandeep are caregivers. And Christine Bresden-Masley is a medical oncologist who was actually my medical oncologist. Our medical advisory board consists of surgeons and medical oncologists, a dietitian, a genetic counselor, and we actually are covered from coast to coast. And we go to our medical advisory board for that, to get their advice on questions that often come to us. Support is really the heart of our foundation. I think it's why we started this. And as Katy mentioned, we wanted to do something so that no one felt as alone as we did when we were going through it, because there was just nobody even, you know, when I used to say, you know, I have like 20% of my stomach, and people, they didn't even know that you could get stomach cancer. In fact, I didn't even know until I was diagnosed, and nobody had any awareness about it. So for us, being able to support people right from the beginning of their journey through treatment, sometimes to end of life, but also sometimes beyond the 5-year mark, is really, really important. We are a safe and confidential place in terms of how we deal with everybody. Anything that you say to us is kept very confidential. We are often available, I'd say 24/7, wouldn't you, Katy? People reach out at all times of the day or night, either by text, you know, on our site, through an email, through other people, like word of mouth. And what we do is we basically try to help people through their journey. So coping with the diagnosis and the prognosis, preparing for surgery, your treatment, they sort of go through, you know, the diet post-surgery and all the side effects that you're going to go through. We don't give medical advice. But what we do is we facilitate peer-based open discussions, and there's nothing that you can't ask in our group. There's nothing we haven't covered. There's nothing we haven't talked about, laughed about, or cried about. We also support another group, which is the Stomach Cancer Sisters, which is a private Facebook group for young women dealing with stomach cancer. And we do that by hosting bi-monthly virtual groups for them. And this slide just shows you the dates of our formal virtual support groups, and they're done either via Google. I think they're going to be switching to Zoom, but they are, again, private and confidential. The dates go right through to the end of next year. It's every second Wednesday of each month. And you can join either by sending us an email at info@mygutfeeling.ca, or you can just complete the form that is on our website under Join Us. And the dates are also available online. You don't have to come to every meeting. It's very much up to you and what you feel comfortable with. You don't have to speak, you can just listen, and caregivers as well as patients and survivors are welcome in these groups.
Our second pillar is education. So something that we're very, very proud of is our annual conference. And actually the next one is coming up. So our 6th annual Stomach Cancer Conference will be hosted on Saturday, November 26th. It's in Toronto, but it's a hybrid event. It's both in person and virtual. And the purpose of this educational session is really to bridge the gap between patients, survivors, caregivers, and healthcare providers and open up a dialogue. We have Canadian speakers, but we also have the international perspective. So for example, this is our program for this year. So you can see that there are several patient, survivor, and caregiver speakers, but we also have people like medical oncologists. We have a surgical oncologist, a palliative care specialist, a gynecologist, a dietitian, as well as other experts that will be on our panel discussion. So really, it's not just a medical professional speaking at you. The point is that you get to hear the stories, the lived experiences of some of the people that are our members, as well as learn about how stomach cancer is diagnosed, treated, and what kind of supports are available both in Canada and internationally. We also host mini sessions, so mini webinar sessions. For example, there are a couple of examples just at the bottom here. So we had a surgical oncologist come speak to our group. We had a dietitian as well as a genetics counselor. And the difference between these smaller series of education compared to our annual conference is that they're quite smaller, they're more tight-knit, and they're more personal. So for example, if you ever had questions for a surgical oncologist that's not your surgical oncologist, this is the opportunity to really get that one-on-one attention without feeling overwhelmed because you're in a clinical setting. And we'll have more of these education series available on our website as well. Other ways that we provide education is through our resources. So today, the whole reason that we're here is to learn about diet and nutrition in the context of gastric cancer. And we'll be actually cooking from one of the resources that we've created with registered dietitians, which is this cookbook right here, Cooking with Joy and Digesting with Ease. So we've come up with several recipes for people going through gastric cancer. So whether you're struggling with weight gain, diarrhea, nausea, constipation, pain, or simply just looking for a good meal, this is what we'll be talking about in our second portion of the event. But also our website has other resources. So for example, we have questions that you should bring forward to your healthcare team. So we find that patients that come to their first appointment might be very overwhelmed with the diagnosis and potentially what they might hear from their healthcare team. So we've created guides on how to facilitate a better, more productive discussion with your healthcare team. We also have patient journeys from people across all stages of gastric cancer, as well as resources on how to find out more information about ongoing clinical trials, which is something that we get very often.
Awareness is one of the other pillars of our foundation. And one of the very big things that we come up with is an empowerment pin, which is called the I Live Without a Stomach pin. And we came up with this idea because people always ask us, how do you live without a stomach? How do you eat without a stomach? And so it was just like, well, we just wanted to give people, those of us that, whether we have a partial gastrectomy and we have a little bit of our stomach left, or for those that have no stomach left, we just wanted to create something that would make them feel positive and to be able to, to just feel strong. This campaign has been going on since 2019. It's available for patients and survivors. It's available on our website at a very minimal cost. Up until now, we've only had it in English, but this year we're very, very pleased to have it in French, Spanish, and Italian. And hopefully, as we grow, we will have it in other languages as well. And you can visit the My Gut Feeling website for information. The other awareness campaign that we're very proud of and is a lot of fun and brings the community together from across different time zones and different parts of the country and different parts of the world is our November 30th Stomach Cancer Awareness Day. So for those of you that don't know, November is Stomach Cancer Awareness Month, but we wanted to have a day that was specifically for Stomach Cancer Awareness Day, for stomach cancer awareness, sorry. And so the actual campaign is called Power of Periwinkle. It started about 5 years ago. We wanted to do something that presented hope and raised awareness and showed light on this disease that, as we know, has little research funding and little awareness. And so we initially started with 6 sites in 2017. And this year, I'm thrilled, we're just thrilled that we are at 35 sites and still counting. So I don't even know if this slide is completely up to date, but and this year, for the first time, we are lighting up in Europe and in many places in the US. And so we're really, really thrilled about that. And as you can see, we've got the Leaning Tower of Pisa that's going to light up. We have some castles that are like from the 12th century in Italy that are going to be lighting up, and some, all the amazing places in Canada that have supported us from almost the beginning, and some fun places in the US. So so people take pictures and they post it to their social media sites, and we share it, we put it on our website, and it kind of keeps going for a few days because people just get incredibly motivated. And last year, in fact, and through COVID, people started to decorate their houses in periwinkle and take pictures. We don't have one of that, but if you go onto our site, you will see that that people started to do that and hold up signs that say Power of Periwinkle.
And then the last pillar of our organization is advocacy, and we advocate in several ways. One of the major ways we advocate is actually through research. So there's something called the Pan-Canadian Oncology Drug Review program, which is an organization that essentially decides whether or not certain drugs will be approved for use in gastric cancer. So we're quite proud that we've been on 4 of these reviews as patient advocates, and 4 out of 4 have been approved. So some of the most novel immunotherapies used in gastric cancers have been approved by Health Canada thanks to the work that we've done. Other ways that we participate in advocacy is through research. So for example, Teresa is on a major project called the Storming Cancer Project, which is a 6-year international project looking at how inflammation can lead to certain cancers, including stomach cancer. We're on cancer decision tools. So for example, we partnered with Sunnybrook to guide the hospital in quality of care marker. So not just survival, but really what patients value and how they make decisions about treatment options. We're members of the hereditary cancer study, as well as being patient advocates on 5 Canadian Cancer Society breakthrough grants for low survivor cancers. Other ways we advocate is through government. So we've been recognized by several members of the Canadian Parliament, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Mayor John Tory, as well as Doug Ford. We've partnered with several organizations, been at multiple conferences, and we have been prominent in the media, especially in November, again, advocating for stomach cancer, because we know that the more advocacy and awareness there is for a certain disease type, the more research money, and hopefully the more treatment options in the future. So that's a little bit about us. We would like to switch gears and talk a little bit about what we found by doing this for the amount of years that we've done this for. So as part of some of our quality improvement projects, we've asked stomach cancer patient survivors and caregivers, what challenges do you face on a daily basis as a patient survivor and caregiver? And what advice would you give to your healthcare team? And this is how patients replied. So I'm not going to go through all the quotes, although you can see here, these are patient voices and direct quotes from members of our organization, but we have identified several themes. So one of the themes that we've identified is that patients really struggle with the initial diagnosis. So I can share a little bit about my experience. Me being a 21-year-old female at the time in 2011, I had to go to the emergency department 3 times. With fainting, because what ended up happening was I was anemic and I kept getting more and more anemic. They couldn't figure out a cause. And because I was a fertile female who still had her period, they just chalked it up to that. But ultimately, on my 3rd visit to the emergency department, when my hemoglobin had dropped significantly, they finally decided that I was anemic for some other reason, and then they ultimately scoped me and diagnosed me with stomach cancer. But you can see from some of the other patient voices here. So for example, Abigail, who is the patient you see just on the right in this photo here. So she says, my journey has not been easy. She's had to advocate for herself on numerous occasions to get the right help. She was dismissed as a young, healthy woman by the family doctor and the emergency room doctor, until several months later when I was told I was a stage 4 stomach cancer. So unfortunately, Abigail passed away last year from stomach cancer, but for her, it was a very long journey with multiple visits to the emergency department and her family doctor just to be diagnosed.
Treatment decisions is also a very, very difficult for the patient, because there's not a lot of options out there. I mean, there's a lot more than when we were diagnosed 11 years ago. I think it was just the one, pretty much. So we have come a long way in terms of the treatment options and decisions, but oftentimes our patients have said to us that, you know, they didn't feel that they had enough time to discuss those options, or the oncologist or the entire team didn't sort of go into the detail. I mean, when you're diagnosed with something like this, what you need is information so that you're able to make those decisions. And in my case, when I was diagnosed, the gastroenterologist that diagnosed me had basically said to me, well, we're going to have to cut you right open. You're probably going to spend about 4 weeks in the hospital, and it'll be about six months before really you're out of even bed. And I just kind of looked at him, and he was like, so I've got a surgery date in about 2 weeks. Can I put you in? And I just sort of looked at him, and my husband and my brother and sister were with me. And I said, well, I can't make that decision right now. I said, I'll have to get back to you. And because I had cancer before, I reached out to my specialist at St. Michael's Hospital, and I basically told him what was going on. And I said, I need to be able to speak to someone else who's going to tell me what this is really going to mean for me and what is out there, and take that time to explain it. And is there someone that you would recommend? And of course, he was wonderful, and he did that. And I ended up choosing to go to the other hospital. I just felt that that doctor was putting me into something without giving me any information except the fact that I definitely had stomach cancer, and it was going to be a long, long road, and I've got to cut you open, but no explanation in terms of what the treatments or what could happen afterwards, nothing. So we need to make sure that patients do get that discussion and are offered all the information that they deserve. Here you'll see this slide that kind of shows all the side effects of going through treatment, but some of these are last much beyond treatment. But the ones that we highlighted are kind of related to the discussion topic today, which is diet and nutrition, and the barriers to it. And so you'll see what's circled is nausea and vomiting, and being full, and weight loss and abdominal pain, and just food as an appetite. And you can see what the other ones are as well. For me personally, I struggled immensely with diet and nutrition from day one. And I would still call it a journey. And this is what we tell people right from the get-go. It is a journey. You have to learn how to eat as if you were a child again. And that's as simple and as complicated as it gets. In my case, although I was lucky enough and able to eat solid food almost immediately, the portions were like minuscule. Nothing stayed down in terms of I didn't suffer so much from dumping, but I did suffer from vomiting, which I still do on occasion 11 years later. I, in fact, lost 95 pounds, which was a person, basically. And in the 11 years since, I've only gained back 15. And I still can't eat spicy foods. I have a big gripe about the fact that I can't eat pasta, and I'm Italian. But it is a journey, and you just have to learn every day how to deal with how your digestive system is going to react that day.
Yeah, and from my end, so having a total gastrectomy, so 100% of my stomach removed, I lost about 35, if not more, 40 pounds initially. And my biggest challenge was really finding what to eat after having my entire stomach removed. I did struggle with dumping syndrome. I found that a lot of the nutritional products out there, for example, Ensure, were very sweet and would actually make me dump, causing me to lose more weight. So it felt kind of like a never-ending battle with diet and nutrition. Also, the other thing that I struggled with was post-radiation strictures. So essentially, after undergoing radiation so close to my surgery, I had developed inflammation right around the area where my esophagus and my small intestine were sewed up, to the point where I couldn't swallow any solids and could barely swallow liquids. My mom, she had a really, really hard time in terms of figuring out what I could eat. For her, it was probably even more challenging than for me, because I knew what I could eat and what I couldn't eat. But ultimately, because commercial products for me weren't working, we got to a point of desperation where we ultimately ended up blending foods such as meat and potatoes, and it was quite disgusting. So really, there was no educational support at that time for me to really understand how to maintain my weight and how to prevent this terrible dumping syndrome. And even now, I still struggle with micro deficiencies. So for example, anemia. So no matter how much iron I eat, I'm still going to be anemic. And this is reflected in other patient voices. So we know that cancer itself, as well as the cancer treatments, whether it's surgery, chemotherapy, or radiation, they all have an impact on diet and nutrition. So whether it's swallowing solids, swallowing liquids, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, or alternatively the constipation that can come from chemotherapy and radiation, pain, abdominal cramps, as well as just not wanting to eat because it doesn't taste right or the texture isn't right. This is something that all of our patients struggle with. And during our support groups, essentially, this is one thing that we discuss at every single group, whether a person is just on chemotherapy or they're going through the actual gastrectomy process. Our peers are there to really kind of instruct about what has worked for them, because although a dietitian may see you at the beginning and may give you some kind of general advice, what we've learned is one size does not fit all. And because dietitians aren't always readily available, people can really go into a loop with their diet and nutrition, which can have impact on them both mentally, but really physically in terms of recovery from gastric cancer. And on that same theme, ongoing long-term support for patients. So what we find is after 5 years, patients are discharged from their medical oncology team. And although, you know, the surgeons or the radiation oncologists may or may not still see you after 5 years, for the most part, patients are discharged to their family doctor. And unfortunately, to date, even in 2022, there is no standard guidebook for family doctors in terms of how to manage patients who have had gastric cancer, especially post-gastrectomy. So like I mentioned before, even 11 years later, I still struggle with anemia. And a big battle that I had to win with my family doctor was every time I was anemic, I was told, you know, take some oral iron supplements, which would cause me to have diarrhea and dumping issues, which forced me to lose even more weight. So I could never tolerate oral iron. And ultimately, we came to the decision to do IV iron. So after 10 years of being anemic, I finally had this iron infusion that's really helped me a lot in terms of my fatigue. So really, we need to do better in terms of our ongoing long-term follow-up for patients. Teresa?
Yes. And so as Katy was saying, with respect to ongoing care and it being available, patients struggle beyond those 5 years, and we also struggle initially because beyond 5 years, there's, as Katy mentioned, there's nothing there. One of the things that we do, because we have these 4 pillars and we have all this support that we offer, we look at it as a very holistic type of support. So it's not just the physical, it's not just the mental, it's all of it. And psychosocial is an incredibly difficult thing to talk about, and it's one of the things that all of us, go through with anyone with a diagnosis of any, life-threatening disease. But gastric cancer is a particularly complex disease, and because you cannot absorb nutrients and you can't eat what you would like to eat, and your body changes, and this incredible change in your body really does a number on you psychologically. Also, food is all about our social well-being. Food is associated with celebrations and with family and with friends and with gatherings. And so when you're a person who can't participate in those things on a regular basis or on any basis, and some people, deal with this for a long time, it is really, really difficult. And the other thing is people fall into incredible depression as well, because sometimes they feel that they're not achieving the goals that their medical team is maybe setting out for them in terms of their weight gain or maintaining a certain level of nutrients. The terrifying prospect of really, like, when you think about it, how do I eat without a stomach? And even though we know we can, I've been doing it for 11 years, so has Katy, and there's others, but there is not a moment in my day when I don't open a fridge or don't open a pantry door, and when I look at food, do I not think, how is this going to affect me? And it's kind of daily, and it's a full-time job. And one of the things, and I'm going to speak about myself personally just for a few seconds here, is after my treatment stopped, so after the chemo and the radiation was done, although I was still being monitored, of course, I went into an incredibly dark, dark place. I became absolutely petrified that the gastric cancer was going to come back. And Katy can attest to this, because although we all have scanxiety, which most cancer patients go through, mine would start 3 weeks before a scan and go like up until I got the results. And it overwhelmed me at a certain point. I became very, very depressed, very, very anxious. I couldn't be left alone for an hour because I was just so sad and so terrified of what my life was going to be like now that I didn't have the treatment, and now that I actually had to look towards living without, a stomach. And for me, it was a double-edged sword, because I also have the Lynch syndrome, so I knew I was at a much higher risk. So I have actually been seeing a psychiatrist since my treatment stopped. He's been an incredible help, part of my life. And it's one of the things that we tell all our patients, that they need to seek out support. You can't do this on your own, in the sense of it's very lonely if you do. We're here to help in the way that we can. We're not the end all be all. We do offer as much as we can. Everything is free of charge. But we often tell our patients that they need to reach out to a psychiatrist or whatever fits their needs. And this goes as well for the caregivers. And so the holistic thing is the health team, like your whole team has to involve, obviously, the person or people that are closest to you and are there with you immediately following like a gastrectomy, but also along your entire journey. And that's your caregivers, whether it's your parents, whether it's a sibling, a spouse, a partner, a friend who's always there. The caregivers are incredibly important for us and to us, but we also recognize the fact that caregivers need their own support because they go through their own trauma, their own PTSD, just the difficulty of realizing that medically you aren't able to help your loved one. So you buy anything else to help that loved one. And I know I can say that I was incredibly lucky. I still am, that I have an incredible support group around me with my family and friends. In fact, the picture up top is my extended family, who pretty much, have been there in different ways through my journey and continue to support me. I know Katy has the same thing in different ways, but support can come from many different angles, and the caregivers are just so crucial in this journey, and they are, they go through the stomach cancer right with you.
So with that, we would like to leave our contact information for you. So if you got anything out of this presentation, is that, we're here. We are one of the only stomach cancer foundations in Canada, and we're here to welcome you to our support groups, and hope to see you on November 26th, which is our big annual education symposium held in Toronto and also virtually. So you can contact us by going through mygutfeeling.ca or emailing us directly. And now, without further ado, let's get to the fun part, which is why we're all here, and that's to cook and try out some of the lovely, lovely recipes that we have in this cookbook, Cooking with Joy and Digesting with Ease.
And if you have any questions, I think you can put them in the chat. We might be able to answer them for you, but let's get to cooking.
Hello, welcome back, everyone. A huge thank you to Katy and Teresa from My Gut Feeling. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, and also all the amazing resources and program offerings from My Gut Feeling. So again, all of that information, you can find out more about My Gut Feeling on the website www.mygutfeeling.ca, as well as their conference information will be on there, so you can check that out as well. So again, thank you to My Gut Feeling, thank you to Katy, thank you to Teresa as well. And if you tuned in a little bit late, we will be posting a recording of today's presentation on our YouTube channel, so you can catch up and watch the full presentation if you'd like to do that. Okay, so really quickly, next month, our last community connections for the year, so Thursday, December 15th, again on the third Thursday. If you would like to tune in, again, you can subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, it'll let you know when we have an upcoming class, but that will be our last class for 2022, so hopefully you can join us then. But without further ado, I have my Gut Feeling apron on, so thank you again to Teresa and Katy. We are getting ready to start our cooking demonstration in about 15 minutes time, so I will say stay tuned, and we will see you soon. Thank you again, everyone.